All right. Thank you back. And well, not really thank you back, but thank you for being here. Um, good thing not everything's live. Welcome back to episode 16 of Psych Your Way to Success. I am Claire, and with me, as always, is
Heather?
Heather. Thank you. And today we had somebody else that requested a topic, and I thought it was a really good one. So this is about mental health in the workplace, mental health first aid, actually. So um, let's get started on this. I have a background in occupational health and safety, so I was really excited to get this question about, it's the qualification for mental health first aid and how it's becoming more obligatory within the workplace to be a leader in the organization. And we'll talk about what it is as well, about its what we're kind of looking at in the future of what to expect for leadership to be, not just thinking about like the metrics of, you know, the output and everything, but maybe what they have to look for within their employees or coworkers, even their bosses. So, um, real quick, if you don't mind, Heather, I'll just give, I had to look it up, just to make sure I did not get it wrong. I did go onto the website, through not it's a national level. So they did say, and I want to make sure that I get my source cited properly so that I do not upset anybody on any level. But we had psychological or mental health first aid is considered to be evidence-based training that an individual would go through in a program administered by the National Council for Mental Well-Being. It teaches people how to identify and understand, as well as respond to signs of mental health and substance use challenges. So, at this point, I just want to put out there, this is not something that is nationally required, for anybody to hold in any position necessarily, unless you're doing mental health counseling, things like that. That might be a requirement. But as of right now, just to be employed, unless an organization chooses to require that. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Heather. I kind of took it over for the last couple minutes. What are your thoughts? Have you seen this? What's going on?
I haven't seen it in action, but I see the
Mhm.
benefits of it. And I do actually think that most companies should have some sort of either understanding or implementation put in place for their corporation. Um, I think we hear a lot about stress and burnout. That seems to be like a more common topic that we talk about when we think about our employees and how to keep them from not burning out. And mainly that almost feels like a self-serving purpose, right? From the standpoint of a company, because if they're burned out, then
Mhm.
now they're going to be absent more, or there's going to be a decrease in productivity and performance. But I think another important aspect is the depression and anxiety, and then also any substance abuse um, that could
Sure.
possibly be happening. I can see a lot in different fields are different, right? So if you're in a restaurant field, there's a lot of dinners, and dinners include alcohol or, just different things like that. And so I think it's an interesting topic. I love this.
Yeah. I would say different industries that I've worked within have definitely struggled and had challenges of their own. Um, I know that this person that had asked the question, one of our listeners, had said, in the last 10 years that they've seen a routine um, of the increase of this necessity of like all of a sudden managers are being required based on, company and organizational requirements, specific to have this type of first aid training because I mean, there could be certain levels of liability if you're looking the other way when you know that somebody is having an issue. Some people and families are trying to civilly go after people. And what are the effects? What are people responsible for? What is the liability and concern? And I just want to put out there right now, I don't have the answers. I am not a lawyer. I don't have the answers for that. But I will say, for me personally, being an EHS manager, environmental health and safety manager, for years, I I had to be aware of people's mental stability or mental status just based on the fact that they're going into a lot of like heavy machinery, they're going into dangerous work sites and doing dangerous tasks, and making sure that people are 100% present in order to do that successfully without injury is exactly the reason why I find this to be so beneficial, right? Like in just about any industry that we're getting into, manufacturing, construction, a lot of the ones that are taking up big numbers of people's in the workplace, this is affecting each and every one of them. But is it mandatory? Is it going to become mandatory? These are really good questions. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of stigma in the workplace that we're still trying to get over, right?
Mm.
Just the fear of
Oh my gosh,
discrimination
stigma.
or job loss, right? I mean, I like
Mhm.
a lack of an understanding of other coworkers, or I mean, I think it's hard to talk about these mental health issues because in some ways it feels like a reflection of
Yeah.
you. And I know like sometimes it's easy to talk about, oh,
Ooh,
I have a cold. What?
a reflection of you in what way? I'm curious what you mean by that.
Like that you can't get your shit together. I think there is a little
Okay.
bit of like, what did I do wrong? Like, how did I not see this coming? Or I think even personally, there's like, sometimes you feel like, how could this be what's happening to me when I take care of myself and I take care of my family and all of those things, that it feels like once you throw that out there, there is some sort of judgment that, oh, what did you do wrong to have this happen, basically.
So you failed. You're thinking that you failed at
Yeah,
something, therefore this is what the outcome is. God,
exactly.
I didn't even think about that. Oh, interesting. I just know that when I encounter and what I encountered quite a bit when I would talk to leadership, when I would like even leadership development courses that I would run, I would hear from leadership saying, "This isn't my job. Like I already have so much else on my plate." Right? Like my bandwidth is full. Like, how do you expect me also to be a counselor in the workplace? And honestly, like, I can't blame them for feeling that way, right? Like, you can't blame somebody for feeling like they're over capacity already. And so oftentimes, what we're seeing is that they are. Nobody's failing by simply saying, hey, I am struggling, right? But that's exactly how we've made them feel. Like, that's how our society has made it and set it up that way. There's that stigma that you talked about that is so prevalent. Man, it's so hard to break through that stigma, especially in some of these industries. But, like, do you think that when it comes to the requirement or maybe this necessity, this push to have leadership learn these skills of recognizing people seeing these challenges, maybe not recognizing it in themselves yet, not verbalizing it. Do you think that this should be added to their plate?
I actually do. I think this is actually an important
Okay.
part of
Yeah, tell
managing
me more.
people. Well, I just think that there is a social responsibility. I think that we are all human. And I think people spend most of their time at work at in a certain time period.
Mhm.
And that,
Their waking period. Yeah.
yeah, and I do feel a sense of responsibility to take care of them. I think that like when you're an owner of a business, the pressure to take care of all the people you're employing is real, or I guess it should be.
Oh yeah.
And so I know,
Good qualifier. Yeah.
right? And, I know when I was running a company, I wanted to know their extended family just to make it all real to me. Like, this business has to be successful because I am supporting not just me and my family, I'm supporting my employees and their families like and whoever they're supporting. Like it becomes exponentially a bigger deal. And I think that just where you want to partner with your children's teachers to know what's actually happening at school and what your child is facing, I think the same is true with your workplace.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that. Like we expect our teachers to tell us about it, like tell us about our children's. Why wouldn't we expect us to be able to do that in the workplace as well? Like, why aren't we holding us ourselves to these standards if you aren't already? I know that there are plenty of people that do take the time to get to know their employees, do understand when these things are coming up. They may be naturals at recognizing some of these triggers, some of these, markers for unwellness in the workplace. But I think being able to integrate this like idea of industrial organizational psychology, I mean, isn't that the core of what we're trying to get at for a lot of people too sometimes, is teaching them like, hey, this is how you recognize mental wellness in the workplace. This is how you can promote it. This is how you can, cultivate mental wellness in the workplace. I mean, I would think that's 100% that at least those of us in that industry are trying to do, and then maybe further pursue. I don't know.
I couldn't agree more. I don't know why it is so. I think part of it is because we think once we're adults, we have it all figured out. If you think about it,
Mhm.
the responsibility of the teachers is because they're children, right? But I think the eye-opening thing is we're adults, but we're still learning, we're still growing, we're still trying to understand, like we're still making mistakes and not being our best selves sometimes. And so having people around you that you can trust and that care about you and that will look out for some of these mental health issues and help us through them or find us help or whatever it is. um, I think it is a social responsibility.
Yeah, and pro tip, not anybody's got it all figured out. Even if they think they do, I promise you, there's
Exactly.
lots of opportunities for improvement there. We're never done. I mean, you ask anybody at the end of their life, of a very long life, they have really great advice, but some of the best advice I've ever heard is you never stop learning. And when you do, I mean, you may as well just lay down and take that big, huge, long nap, right? Like that's what they say. And they just never want you to stop learning, stop believing that there's more out there, because life is not stagnant. Like if look at technology alone. I mean, how stagnant is that? It's not. I mean, it's growing. How like I need the newest updated phone because I just bought one. Well, the newest one is coming out in 6 months. Dang it, I missed it. Right? Like you can't buy a computer without knowing that there's an update later on that's coming through. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of my biggest things, is making sure that you continuously learn. Mhm.
Exactly. I mean, I think that is such a great point, even just with, something as silly as technology, like you were talking about. Like, yeah, my phone is broken, but I'm not getting a new phone because I know the new one's coming out soon. So I'm waiting,
Yes.
and it's like, it's so
Yep.
funny. Without that knowledge, I probably would have bought a new phone um, earlier without
And
even thinking
it's not
about
like
it.
they tell you when the new one's coming out.
Right. And I'm just like guessing that it will. And so like I think that And and also, like, why I think it's important at a workplace is because generally people are doing the same thing, and then when you see that there is a difference in their, um, work habits, work productivity, it's the first sign that something is not right, right? And it could be maybe they're
Mhm.
dissatisfied in their job, maybe they're but generally it has more to do with what's happening on the outside or inside their brain or like, and so
True.
it's nice to attack it from day one as opposed to day 500.
Completely agree. Um, but it's never too late. I think attacking this as soon as you can when you realize it's an option, I think we have an obligation at that point to absolutely start being aware and taking steps to be more skilled at recognizing the challenges as they arise, substance use, mental unwellness in the workplace. If there's any kind of challenges that you're seeking, it I mean, if you're trying to sell it to somebody that's incredibly pragmatic and just looking at numbers only, I mean, you're going to get an efficiency increase if you're on top of this, right? So understand that even from that point of view, it's beneficial. And that's the very last stage we should be worried about. So I like looking at it from that point of view. And again, those obligations currently are not mandatory, right? But I would say, are they mandatory to you, right? Like personally, is that something that you consider to be important? Is that something you would want somebody to be looking out for your children or your loved ones in their own workplace in case something came up? My answer is yeah. Heck yes. So,
Right? And that's why I think it's important to know the spouses, the girlfriends, the kids, the whatever it is, so there gets to build trust. I think I always think of my workplace as my family. It's like your work family, right? And it's just like you should take care of
totally.
each other, just be not and I don't think that there should be an obligation to, but I do think there should be a social responsibility there. I do.
Yeah, and you've
Um,
definitely mentioned social responsibility a couple times. That's completely valid. There is so much to be said for social responsibility.
yeah, and then I think it's all about the approach, because that's a tough thing to talk about in a workplace setting. It's sometimes you feel that you might be um, a, approached with judgment, or I don't know. I just think, or that if you really say what's happening, that there will be some stigma or something that's like taken away from you that you don't want taken away from you, or do you know what I mean? Like there's so much. Um,
Oh, 100%.
it's stressful. It's
Well,
a
and
stressful
no one's
time.
here to say yeah, and no one's here to say that you're not going to lose your job over it, that you're not gonna have retaliation because of it. I can't predict what's gonna happen in anybody's workplace. What I can say is that if that's what's going to happen within that workplace, I certainly hope that there's so many more opportunities for you elsewhere, right? Like, seek employment elsewhere if that's the way your workplace, you have that opportunity if that's the case. Um, if we're just talking about like what do I have to be aware of when I'm in the workplace as a leader, like what types of things, what kinds of triggers are we talking about? That will be a completely separate episode. I think that we could really deep dive into like some of the steps that you should look for in the workplace of some challenges that might come up, like what are the signs, what are some of the symptoms in the workplace that we should discover and be aware of, and when should my little alarm bells be going off? When do I approach somebody as a leader, and how do I involve HR? What are my next steps? And that's kind of what they're talking about with this training, is how to best equip yourself to do this successfully, which is why I think it's such a wonderful thing.
I agree,
So,
because there are steps. There is like a protocol that,
mhm.
in my opinion, is
Yeah.
pretty successful,
I mean, there's so far, I think
right?
those that have done it would happily agree with you too. Yeah. I was at conferences for occupational health and safety where I did speak on, mental health in the workplace and how to recognize these signs and symptoms. But it appears that there are actual certifications that people are going through now to be able to become very skilled at this. And that's kind of exciting to me. So we're wrapping up. Any last words, Heather, for us on this topic?
Honestly, I think my biggest takeaway is be brave and be understanding. Those would be my two
That's
takeaways.
excellent. And you heard it here. Be brave. Yep. Understanding, empathy, under like human, human, humanize the situation, right? All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for being here. And again, we're going to have a follow up episode with respect to talking about, as a leader, what are some of the signs and symptoms that we can be aware of in the workplace. Obviously, they're not all of them. We'll just touch on a few and kind of give you a heads up on maybe when you might want to start talking about it. All right. Thanks again.
Sounds
Find us on
good.
Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and YouTube. If you have any questions, please let us know. And the resource that I used for this, again, is that National Council. You can find them at nationalcouncil.org. And look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks so much.
Thanks.